What's going on, YouTube, fellow redeemers? All right, so today we're going to talk about Matthew, chapter 22, verse 36. And that is going to revolve around Jesus's response to what is the most important commandment. And Jesus's response was, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. That's number one. And the second is love your neighbor as yourself. Now, these are explicitly outlined in the Old Testament as well, but also with the 10 Commandments. Okay, we'll kind of go over those as well. With the 10 Commandments, they can also be broken down into a structure that falls within those two very important commandments that Jesus laid out. So, before we get into that, let's talk about why we should love God, right? Why we should treat our neighbor as ourselves. I mean, these are very counterintuitive ideas in the world. They really are. First off, you might be thinking, well, if God is so powerful and if God is everywhere, why do I need to worship Him? Why do I need to love Him? Why does He demand that of me, right? And it's to understand that us as human beings are built to worship, okay? We truly are. And even if you're secular, okay, let's say you don't even believe you're created or, you're built to do something. We want to fixate on something. We always do. Okay, and we need something that is much greater than ourselves to fixate on. Okay, now you have some of these people that might be able to do it, but typically speaking, their aim is very low and they don't get very far in life. And these people can kind of be, well, they're kind of evident to look at. Again, if you're aiming to, to get your next pair of shoes, that's a really low aim. And look, that's not to say that that's not valid. I mean, maybe you're homeless and you don't have shoes, and shoes is a big deal. I get it. I do understand that. Okay, I've participated in homeless ministries, and I get it. I do get that. But again, that is a low aim. And again, if you are homeless, that is where it's kind of evident that if that is where you're aiming at, that is where you're going to be. And it's not to say that, again, if your aim is low, that you'll be homeless. I'm not trying to say that, but you're not going to get where you want to be, okay? Which, ideally, if you were homeless, your goal would be not to be homeless and maybe be a benefit to those around you. And I would say that that in these commandments and loving God, we're able to take the best possible good and visualize it. And again, going back to the analogy of a sailor sailing by a star. The sailor's not trying to get to the star, right? But he is trying to get somewhere, and he uses that star to get there. And that is exactly what we are trying to do when we love God, when we point ourselves towards God, something much bigger and better than ourselves. A perfect idea of good embodied. That is God. And it's also an acknowledgement that as humans, our definition of perfect is very, very lackluster. It's not there. And just to give you an example of this, if I asked, the typical person, what does a perfect human being look like? And a lot of people will come off and say something like, well, they don't get angry, they're not greedy, they're not, just any other things. And let's be honest, a person who doesn't get angry, that is probably a medical condition, right? And that's obviously not the ideal person, because people do get angry. That is an emotion we experience, and it is normal. So right then and there, we can see that we have problems with our idea of perfect. And so it's this ready acknowledgement that we are ignorant in many things, and that we are going to kind of defer some of these things to basically an unknown. And right here in the Bible, it specifically says that you're not going to get everything. You're not going to understand everything using human intellect. And that is actually how God wants it, because He wants you living your life according to the Bible, because He wants it to be apparent. He does not want you to use human intellect to try and get further. Now, granted, He gives people differing things of intellect, but as far as trying to figure out the world, and trusting in God, and in where your moral compass is pointed, He wants you to rely on the Bible. Okay? Now, as far as like building things, hey, use your intellect to your heart's content to interact with the world. Okay? Because again, it's creation. And with creation, it's our intellect is specifically designed to interact with creation, with the world, okay, with Earth. All right. So, kind of went on a little bit of a rant there, but to kind of bring it back around, again, that is why we need to love God, is so we actually have a really good way to navigate this world in a moral way. Okay, it's how we actually orientate ourselves in a moral way, which is the proper way. Because if we look at science by itself, I would argue that science and rationality by itself tends to be a pretty horrific way to navigate in the world. All one needs to do is look at, the teachings of like Karl Marx, and we understand that it's not the best way, because again, it was designed to create this perfect society, or as close to it as possible. And we start to see that there are legitimate issues with trying to create our perfect society. And this is exactly why we were given our commandments. It's because it kind of takes the guesswork out of it. They are not there because God needs us to do these things. No, we need to do this in order to live the best possible life as close to God as possible. Because again, if we understand that apart from God we can do no good, then we can begin to appreciate life, because we see God in everything, because there is good all around us. Even if the only thing you can thank God for is your socks right now and the toes that you have, and you may not even have all those. It may get to be like that, but you can still find God in all the good things that are happening around you. And so this is why it's important to orientate yourself with with those first, we'll say, 4 commandments of the 10 commandments that we're going to kind of go over, that encompasses this catch-all commandment that Jesus gave, which is love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Okay? And so let's go ahead and look at this. So again, we can see right here. Now, this is just a Wikipedia article. It's the reason why I pick up Wikipedia and I'm not going to a Bible thing is because, again, if you're watching this on YouTube, I know you have access to Wikipedia, and you've probably used it to find other things. And here it's incredibly useful, and it tends to be a secular resource, which is kind of the way I'm doing this. Even though it is heavily Christian-based, it is to be able to appeal to people who have a more secular outlook, but to have them understand that even following the commandments is generally a good idea. And no, I would say that it's not a given in a secular viewpoint. Again, if you have something that I want, murder actually sounds not too bad, because I don't have to worry about you coming back and taking it if I steal from you. And again, I can rationalize that. And there's a whole bunch of issues with that. And again, there's logical reasons you could combat that with, but from a moral standpoint, which is really the way we want to go with this, is trying to maximize good and actually looking at good as a solid concept and evil also as a solid concept. Because again, we need black and white. We need a way to navigate through the world. If I plop you down in the middle of a field, okay, let's just visualize this. And you could go in any direction, and every single direction basically looks the same. At that moment, you're basically swimming in an ocean of gray, okay? Because right now you're not moving and you're looking and you're almost paralyzed by your choice. But the second that you move, okay, the second that you start walking in a direction, it is very black and it is very white. You are not moving in other directions. You are moving in that direction. That is very clear. And so in order for us to understand, we need black and white in our life to be able to move through life. We cannot sit there and navigate life by an ocean of gray. We need black and white. And good and evil are really good ways to navigate that, as well as order and chaos. Those are also kind of a subset of that as well. And those are very useful as well. And we'll find in Ecclesiastes, there is a time, to hate, and there is a time to love. The Bible covers all these things, believe it or not. But Jesus is very specific. The way forward, the way to a better life for everyone, to include yourself, is through love. And so that's what these 10 commandments really are based around. And so the first four, let's see if I can highlight them for you. The first four, okay, right here, those are going to be the ones that basically allow you to kind of demonstrate that you want a closeness with the Father. It is your attempt to be all in on God, okay? Or if it's easier for you, the very concept of good, okay? This is your dedication to good, okay? It is not putting other things before good, okay, or God. So this right here, this can literally be, so this first commandment, all right, and right here, I am the Lord thy God, and thou shalt have no other gods before me. So right here, we're basically following the Reformed Protestant version. So this is what I'm going to go with. And these right here are basically the same commandment right here. All right, so it is God saying that I am in charge of your life, okay? And you should not put other things ahead of me, okay? And the second one kind of goes into that as well. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. So basically, it is this concept of idolatry. God doesn't want you to worship ideas or things above him. In certain aspects, we could say that, a car is some people's idol because, again, they've always wanted a Dodge Viper. And so, boom, that is their idol. And they wash it, they wax it, they pay homage to it every day. That should be God, right? You should be doing that with God, not a Dodge Viper, okay? Not that I like a Dodge Viper. That was the first thing that kind of came to mind. And also, you should not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, okay? Now, this is a proper fear of God. You should fear not doing good. Why? Because if you're not doing good, then you're doing evil, and evil will almost always be found out, okay? And maybe it's not, but then in that case, you're always looking over your back, and that is not the way God wanted you to live life. And so we can see by these, I'm sorry, I did not highlight all of them. So we can see by these first four right here, okay, and I'm going to cover the Sabbath here in a minute, that this is about God. Now, again, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Now, why does God need a day? Is it because he took a day off and, he's like, well, because I took a day off, now you have to take a day off. It's not quite like that. God did everything to model, to show us how to live. God took the day off is because we would need to take that day off. But more importantly, it wasn't just a day off. It was also a day to meditate on God and to give him thanks and to concentrate on him and to step out of the world and to concentrate on a higher on the higher plane of existence, heaven. Okay? It is to really meditate on heaven and God and all those things that God has done for us. And it wasn't a time to get ahead in the world because, again, that we need rest from that anyway. But we also need to refresh ourselves spiritually. And in order to do that, we meditate on the things that God has done for us. We give thanks and we spend time with the people we love the most. That is what it's for, okay? That is what the Sabbath was for. It was for refreshing ourselves. Because God knew that we needed refreshing. All right? Now, I've heard it said, and I really like it when I really liked it, was honor thy mother and father. Now, this is a bridge command. Okay, I kind of highlighted all these. But this is what they call a bridge command, which bridges, all right, it's like a good transitional command between loving God and then love your neighbor as yourself. Now, okay, so honor thy mother and father. Okay, now you may have a mother and father that's not worth honoring. All right, let's be real. Not everybody has a good one. Maybe you suffered abuse, or maybe they abused your siblings, or maybe something even more treacherous was involved. Okay, but at the end of the day, it is understanding where you came from. It is understanding where you came from, okay, and where you are and where you are going, okay? And if you can't honor them, right, the very least, you have to try to forgive them. You do. And I don't know your walk of life, but I do know that forgiveness is for you. And that is how you can start to atone for your own sin. That is what it's all about. It's about bettering your connection with the people. And honestly, maybe you had to cut your father and mother out of your life, and maybe you need to write a note and get that out. All right? And maybe you need to seek help, and you should. But that is what that commandment is, and it transitions into the other ones, which is, again, a lot of people would say that these are common sense, and I would agree to a certain point, which is, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet. And we'll just leave that one right there, because that's pretty much, you shouldn't be jealous of the things that are not yours, okay? So murder, I don't think we have to really cover that too much. But again, what Jesus said about this specifically is that if you have anger in your heart towards another brother, you're guilty of murder. Well, then I guess we're all guilty of murder. And that's the point, okay? Is that we think that we can, that if we're following this, if we're doing the actions, we're good, right? Again, most of these are don't do's, right? And you're like, I've never killed anybody. Well, that's great, but we've all been mad at people, and so we're guilty of that. And I know you're probably like, well, why did he, why is it said like this? Why is it like this? And it has to do with the condition of our heart, because you see, God is not about loopholes, okay? He's not about, saying, well, technically, it's kind of like this. God doesn't play that. It is the condition of your heart. And you need to understand the condition of your heart, which is, how are you like, think of the most terrible person and try to imagine yourself getting to that point of becoming that person. And you might say, well, I could never do that. But that is probably wrong. There probably is a point to where you could truly become a very terrible person. And it's understanding the nature of that and how we can begin to change that, on how we can truly begin to understand what behaviors and motives and habits feed into that darker side of ourselves. And it and that is how we can become truly empathetic and connect with our fellow neighbors out of love and understanding and provide forgiveness. So again, that's kind of the breakdown on Matthew chapter 22, verses 36 through 40. Okay, and again, these are the Ten Commandments, and they are on Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 17, and then again in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verses 4 through 21. In case you wanted to kind of go through there and read that. Again, now the law of Moses was much more than just this, but when we're talking about kind of how to navigate, this is a great place to start. All right, and how to move forward through the world, and there's a lot of context that needs to be understood with the law of Moses. Again, the Israelites needed. Again, at this point, they were in the wilderness and they were heading towards the promised land, and they still had a lot of Egyptian ways about them. So they needed very, very, very rigid rules to follow, and this was a basis for how they were going to conduct themselves as a society. And this was to set them apart from everybody else. Okay, so that was the principal idea behind this. But when it comes to living your life as a Christian, again, these are also to set you apart. Your love of God and putting the higher good as much as you can in your mind, your heart, and your spirit, putting that to the highest possible good, like that is what it's all about. And so that's kind of where I want to conclude this video on the Ten Commandments. That is exactly what it's for. It is for getting closer to God. It's getting plugged up into the source. That is God. He is unlimited love, good. And when we recount the ways that God has blessed us, okay, whether it is just having a warm jacket at night or having a luxurious home, no matter what, it's understanding the way God has acted in your life. Because God consistently told the Israelites, hey, go back and remember how I delivered you from Egypt. And again, I have a video on Egypt as well, and on the wilderness. So if you want to go watch those, by all means. But it's understanding that he is the source of how we can love others like that. He is the source on how we can show that type of empathy that God demands us to show. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there. So I appreciate it. If you watch this long, I definitely appreciate that. Thank you very much. If you liked it, I would also appreciate it if you click the like button. And if you'd like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit subscribe. But I'm kind of curious, what commandment do you think you struggle with, or what do you think about how Jesus summed up, basically, I would say, the Ten Commandments into those two? And understand, Jesus did not appear to abolish the law. He came to fulfill it. Okay, so that's very clear. So God still expects us to try to live like this, okay? Because this is one way we demonstrate that we love God, is by trying to follow His commandments, and we try to orientate our hearts towards Him. And yeah. So I would love to know your thoughts on that in the comment section. But yeah, I think we'll leave it there, and y'all have a good one. Thanks.